Bambusan MercadoLibre, Latin America's e-commerce champion. In the summer of 1999, while Silicon Valley was buzzing with dot-com fever and Latin America was still emerging from decades of economic instability, a 28-year-old Stanford MBA named Marcos Galperin had a vision that would transform an entire continent's relationship with commerce. Standing in Buenos Aires with just $7.5 million in seed funding from JP Morgan Partners, Galperin wasn't just planning to copy eBay's model for Latin America. He was about to architect the most valuable internet company the region had ever seen. MercadoLibre, which translates to free market, would grow from a simple online marketplace into a comprehensive ecosystem that would facilitate over $20 billion in transactions annually and serve more than 320 million users across 18 countries. This is the story of how one entrepreneur's relentless focus on solving Latin America's unique challenges built an empire that would redefine e-commerce for 500 million people. The Latin America that Galperin entered in 1999 presented obstacles that would have deterred most entrepreneurs. Internet penetration was less than 2% across the region, credit card ownership was minimal, and postal systems were notoriously unreliable. Traditional banking services reached less than 40% of the population, and cross-border commerce was virtually non-existent for individual consumers. Most critically, trust in online transactions was nearly zero, a legacy of political and economic instability that had plagued the region for decades. Where others saw insurmountable barriers, Galperin saw opportunity. He understood that Latin America's challenges weren't bugs to be fixed, but features to be designed around. His insight was profound. Rather than waiting for the infrastructure to improve, MercadoLibre would become the infrastructure. The company launched simultaneously in Argentina and Brazil, immediately differentiating itself from global players by offering local language support, accepting local payment methods, and understanding cultural nuances that multinational corporations consistently missed. The early years required Galperin to become part entrepreneur, part educator, and part infrastructure builder. By 2001, as the dot-com bubble burst globally and many investors fled emerging markets, MercadoLibre had already facilitated over 1 million listings and was processing thousands of transactions monthly. The company's growth strategy was methodical and localized. Instead of treating Latin America as a homogeneous market, Galperin established distinct operations in each country, hiring local talent who understood everything from payment preferences to shipping logistics. In Mexico, the company learned that buyers preferred cash-on-delivery payments, so they built systems to accommodate that. In Colombia, where address systems were informal, they developed location-based delivery networks that worked with local landmarks rather than traditional postal codes. By 2005, MercadoLibre was operating in 13 countries and had processed over 10 million transactions, but Galperin knew that to truly scale, the company needed to solve the fundamental problem of financial inclusion that was limiting e-commerce growth across the region. The launch of MercadoPago in 2003 marked MercadoLibre's evolution from marketplace to financial services powerhouse, though few recognized its significance at the time. Initially designed simply to facilitate payments on the MercadoLibre platform, MercadoPago quickly became the company's secret weapon for financial inclusion. The service allowed users to deposit cash at physical locations and use those funds for online purchases, effectively bringing millions of unbanked consumers into the digital economy for the first time. By 2008, MercadoPago was processing over $1 billion in payment volume annually and had expanded beyond the MercadoLibre ecosystem to serve external merchants. The timing was perfect. Smartphone adoption was accelerating across Latin America, and consumers were increasingly comfortable with digital services. Galperin recognized that MercadoPago wasn't just a payment processor. It was becoming a digital bank for people who had never had access to traditional banking services. The company began offering credit, loans, and investment products, growing MercadoPago's total payment volume to over $12 billion by 2017, and establishing MercadoLibre as a legitimate threat to traditional financial institutions across the region. When MercadoLibre went public on Nasdaq in 2007, raising $333 million at a $1.1 billion valuation, it became the first major Latin American e-commerce company to list on a U.S. exchange. The IPO wasn't just a financial milestone, it was validation that Latin American tech companies could compete globally and attract international capital on their own terms. However, Galperin used the public status strategically rather than defensively, raising additional capital to accelerate expansion and infrastructure development while maintaining operational independence from the quarterly pressures that often constrain public companies. The public listing came just as Amazon was beginning to eye Latin American markets more seriously, and Galperin knew that MercadoLibre's local advantages would only remain sustainable if the company could build deeper moats around its business. This led to massive investments in logistics infrastructure, including the development of MercadoEnvios, a shipping and fulfillment service that would become crucial for handling the 674 million items sold on the platform by 2019. Unlike Amazon's approach of building massive centralized fulfillment centers, MercadoLibre created a distributed network that could handle the unique geography and infrastructure challenges of Latin America, from the urban density of Sao Paulo to the remote regions of Patagonia. The period from 2010 to 2015 represented MercadoLibre's transformation from regional success story to continental infrastructure. The company's logistics investments began paying massive dividends as e-commerce adoption accelerated across Latin America. MercadoEnvios grew from handling 30% of platform shipments in 2012 to over 80% by 2015, giving MercadoLibre unprecedented control over the customer experience while generating additional revenue streams. The company's marketplace expanded beyond individual sellers to include major retailers and brands, with gross merchandise volume growing from 2.3 billion in 2010 to 7.1 billion in 2015. More importantly, MercadoLibre's ecosystem approach was creating powerful network effects. Users who joined for marketplace transactions stayed for payment services, which led them to shipping services, which increased their platform engagement and lifetime value. By 2015, the company was facilitating over 344 million transactions annually across its various services, and its market capitalization had grown to over $8 billion. Galperin had successfully built what he called the operating system for commerce in Latin America. But the most dramatic growth was yet to come. The smartphone revolution that transformed MercadoLibre between 2016 and 2020 exceeded even Galperin's ambitious projections. Mobile commerce went from representing less than 30% of platform transactions in 2015 to over 85% by 2020, driven by rapidly improving mobile internet infrastructure and the proliferation of affordable smartphones across Latin America. This shift wasn't just about existing customers using different devices. It brought millions of new users into the MercadoLibre ecosystem, particularly in rural and lower-income demographics that had never had computer access. The company's focus on mobile-first design and functionality paid enormous dividends, with mobile app downloads exceeding 100 million by 2018. MercadoPago's mobile wallet functionality became particularly crucial during this period, allowing users to make in-store purchases, transfer money to friends and family, and access credit services entirely through their phones. The mobile transformation accelerated MercadoLibre's growth across all metrics. Gross merchandise volume reached $12.9 billion in 2019, representing an 81% increase over the previous year, while total payment volume through MercadoPago exceeded $20 billion. The company's revenue grew from $844 million in 2015 to $2.3 billion in 2019, making it not just the largest e-commerce company in Latin America, but one of the fastest growing major tech companies globally. As MercadoLibre entered 2020, Galperin had built something unprecedented. A technology company valued at over $50 billion that was simultaneously the dominant e-commerce platform, payment processor, logistics provider, and increasingly financial services company across Latin America. The COVID-19 pandemic, rather than disrupting this growth, accelerated it dramatically as consumers across the region turned to digital commerce out of necessity. During the second quarter of 2020, MercadoLibre added more new users than it had in any previous full year, with over 20 million new buyers joining the platform. Gross merchandise volume grew 122% year over year in local currencies during the first half of 2020, while MercadoPago's off-platform payment volume increased by 176%. The company's market capitalization exceeded $80 billion by late 2020, making it more valuable than many traditional retailers and financial institutions that had operated in Latin America for over a century. Perhaps most remarkably, MercadoLibre achieved this growth while maintaining profitability and generating positive cash flow. proving that the company's infrastructure investments and ecosystem approach had created genuine competitive advantages rather than simply subsidized growth. The empire that Marcos Galperin built represents far more than a successful technology company. It demonstrates how deeply understanding local markets and solving fundamental infrastructure problems can create sustainable competitive advantages that transcend traditional business categories. MercadoLibre succeeded where multinational corporations failed because Galperin never tried to impose Silicon Valley solutions on Latin American problems. Instead, he built Latin American solutions that were sophisticated enough to compete globally while remaining accessible to users who were often participating in the formal economy for the first time. The company's impact extends beyond commerce into financial inclusion, job creation, and economic development across the region. Over 13 million sellers use MercadoLibre's platform to reach customers, many of them small businesses that would never have had access to continental markets through traditional channels. MercadoPago has provided financial services to millions of people who were previously excluded from the banking system, while MercadoEnvios has created logistics infrastructure that benefits the entire e-commerce ecosystem, not just MercadoLibre's own operations. Today, MercadoLibre stands as proof that emerging markets don't need to wait for developed world solutions. They can build their own, often better suited to local needs and capable of achieving global scale. Galperin's vision of the free market has created exactly that, a platform where anyone with an internet connection can participate in commerce, access financial services, and build a business regardless of their geographic location or economic background. The company processes over 1 billion transactions annually, serves more than 320 million users, and generates over $5 billion in annual revenue, while continuing to grow at rates that exceed most technology companies globally. From that initial $7.5 million investment in 1999, MercadoLibre has created over $100 billion in shareholder value, while fundamentally transforming how 500 million people buy, sell, pay, and access financial services. This is more than a business success story. It's the blueprint for how thoughtful entrepreneurs can build infrastructure-level companies that create lasting value for entire regions while achieving the scale and profitability that global investors demand. Marcos Galperin didn't just build the eBay of Latin America, he built something far more ambitious and impactful, an empire that continues to define the future of commerce and financial services across one of the world's most dynamic and rapidly growing economic regions.